Hey, podcast listeners, it's Savannah here, producer of Corporate Competitor Podcast. And as you know, Dawn and our entire team became part of the Maxwell Leadership family in 2022. Well, today you have the opportunity to become our teammates too. There are many of you who are listening right now who would love to launch your own business or start coaching other people. And we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership certified team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. Plus, you will get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more information.
What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community. I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Stacie Mason, IBM's Global Managing Director for TD SYNNEX. Stacie grew up in New Hampshire and joined IBM in 1995 as a storage sales specialist and has since risen through the ranks to become a leader in American computer manufacturing. Many have noted Stacie's incredible business accomplishments, but today it is my pleasure to introduce her role as a mentor, a mother, and of course, an athlete.
Humility, self-awareness, empathy. Absolutely critical to be a good leader. There's two distinct different people in the professional world that take leadership positions. You have leaders and you have managers. Managers take advantage of their position and their teams will do what they need them to do. A leader who has more of those soft skills works with their team to do what they need them to do and to want to do what they need them to do. Can you learn to do that? I don't know.
Stacie, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks, Don. Glad to be here.
You're the first ever leader of a satirical math magazine that we have had on the Corporate Competitor Podcast. We saw that at Manchester Memorial High School in New Hampshire, you wrote for the Exponent.
Oh, yes. I think it's safe to say there were no long lines of students waiting to get their hands on the latest edition of the Exponent.
The vaunted math humor didn't really have people lined up.
It did not. But there are enough of us that made it worthwhile. And like you said, the satirical math magazine, math humor, math logic games. I've always loved logic problems, puzzles, and the Exponent just gave me an opportunity to try my hand at creating the content. I hadn't thought about it for the longest time. My next career just might be a puzzle creator or editor. You just never know. Maybe I can send my resume to the New York Times.
You're going to be the next leader of Wordle.
That's right. When Will Shortz retires, I'm ready to jump in.
I love it. It totally makes sense that you would then become a leader in today's computer manufacturing world. Probably not surprising given all that you achieved there, but you were also a cheerleader for the Crusaders.
Yep. Back in the 80s in New Hampshire, we sought out opportunities to compete wherever we could, but it's nothing like the sport it is today. I mean, my husband and I brought our girls up in Dallas. I don't think it's stretching to say this may be the epicenter of the cheerleading world. You look at those practice schedules, the training regimens, it's pretty grueling. Both of them were high school cheerleaders in 6A Texas schools. They both quit to do competitive cheer. I would bet, as a father of a young cheerleader, you would agree with me when I say it's absolutely a sport.
Yeah.
Anyone who doesn't think it's a sport needs to probably pop into any one of these top tier cheer gyms and just see how long they can last.
I went to a game where my daughter was cheering, and there she was with a brace on her arm because she had actually injured it. So yes, I do agree with you. What it requires is quite athletic. How do you go from Durham, New Hampshire, studied business administration at the University of New Hampshire, all the way to one of the world's great companies?
It wasn't a straight path. Lots of sidetracks. First job out of college was interesting. I was so proud because I was in the executive training program for Jordan Marsh. It became Macy's. I did that about 6 months and realized there has to be an easier way to make a living, better hours, better money. At the time, do you remember the term the Massachusetts miracle? There was tech companies all over the place in the 80s, but in the 90s, it wasn't feeling that miraculous. I knew that tech was a place I had an interest in, so I took a job at a little tiny computer company called Dallas Stone.
Dallas Stone.
Thank you, Dallas Stone, for giving me my start. In Manchester, the whole Dallas thing, it's a coincidence. I was a telemarketer, gained some very base level skills, but sometimes people, I think if they work at a smaller company, they've got a little limited opportunity. And so to move, to grow, you have to go somewhere else. I was afforded with the opportunity to go be an inside sales rep at IBM in Dallas, Texas. And at the time, IBM for sure in the 90s was one of the biggest, baddest computer companies in the industry. I didn't even hesitate. I packed up my little apartment, moved to Dallas. It's kind of like starting as a bank teller in a bank. It's like starting in the mailroom. But there's so many opportunities. I'm a little bit like a unicorn because I've spent my entire career essentially at one company, but I've been able to do so many different things, really get out of my comfort zone. I've had to do a lot of public speaking. Like for a lot of people at the beginning, it was terrifying. The more you do it, the more you become more comfortable with it. And all right, check, I've got that done. I've spent time in finance, not true finance, but an opportunity to be developing the sales and compensation plans for the global IBM company. Just opportunities to take my skill level and broaden it so that for the next opportunity, I had one more skill and I was that much more qualified to compete for that next job. It was a great opportunity to be around so many different people, areas, expertise. I took advantage of every learning opportunity I could. I built my network and then built a career that I've been proud of.
To do that, you have to have within you the ability, the willingness to be uncomfortable. You have to be willing to find these places that are not in your immediate zone to go grow. Where does that come from for you?
Where does that come from? I've always been a big goal setter. My dad was an electrician. When I was a kid, I'd go on job sites with him. When I was in high school and college, I was an apprentice electrician for him. So that's another little skill set in my bag. And I'd go to these incredible homes that people built that I couldn't even imagine. You know what? Someday I want to be able to have this, live here, do that. What it's going to take is for me to do things that no one in my family had really done. And I was very fortunate. I had incredibly supportive parents who drilled into me I could do anything I wanted to do. No one had gone to college at that time. The most successful person I knew was the UPS driver, which there's, good, solid, honest work. Nothing wrong with that. But I saw the world as a bigger place than I had ever been. And I think I just always wanted to experience as much as I could. And I can tell you when I first worked at IBM, I would go out to lunch and I would intentionally keep my badge on because I was so proud of the fact that I had that badge. I would pretend, oh, I forgot to take it off. I was so proud. So corny.
Pretty awesome. We have a premise in this podcast, the idea that there is actually a disproportionate number of Fortune 500 executives who were involved in sporting activities, and competitiveness helped drive who they were as a young person. I'd love to know, what advice are you giving, if you're giving it to your own children and others, about the importance of developing that competitive spirit?
When you're engaged in any competitive activities, you're forced to look at yourself in probably a more critical light. And I don't mean negatively, but critically. How am I performing? What could I be doing better today? Could I be giving the team more to be successful? What else do they need? Always kind of doing a whole self-assessment. So much about professional success is driving yourself to be that much more effective, getting a little bit more done at the end of the day. As a leader, giving your team more reasons to believe they're in the place they're meant to be. It's just seeking to be better every single day. People that settle for the status quo, they're never looking for that self-improvement. They can be productive employees for sure, but are they going to make a difference in your organization? Are they going to be a real change agent on your team? Are they going to think of some new way to get this done, to sell that solution, to be more efficient? Whatever job you're in, a competitor gets up every day and thinks, how do I make this day better? How do I make my performance better? Got to do that. If you don't, you'll end up having a career that perhaps you get a paycheck, but I don't know how much fulfillment you'd get if you're not striving.
I love this reference you make here to the importance of self-assessment, because self-assessment can sometimes be ugly. What advice would you give to us on how to be good at giving yourself honest feedback without beating yourself up too much?
That's the tricky juggle, isn't it? Be honest feedback to yourself without beating yourself up. Because you're right, a lot of folks just don't want to do it. It's easier not to do it.
It's easier not to do it. Most people, if they do it, are so self-critical in those moments that they kind of do damage to themselves.
Right. For me, it's a gut check. A lot of times when I'll get off a conversation, whether it's a client conversation, whether it's an employee conversation, I'll just ask myself, did I accomplish what I needed to accomplish? How is the message perceived? And it always helps if you've got someone in your professional sphere that you can validate feedback just to kind of get an external view. It doesn't have to be your boss. I just know that I don't have all the answers. I just know that. And I just know that things can always get better. You're never at perfection. The minute you think you're great is the minute you're just a bore to be around. So much of it is just about humility and the ability to know that you don't have the answers and you can always get better. Always get better.
But you have to know you don't always have the answers. You got to know where you can go to grow. So failure, such a great teacher. Can you maybe share a story where a competitive experience affected the way you handled failure in your professional life?
Oh, yeah. Early in my career, I was in my first, I'd say, significant leadership role with sales. So when you're in sales, people can measure performance pretty easy. We had a really rough year. I was a couple years in this role. The numbers didn't come in as I expected. There was all kinds of shakeups. And, I was essentially told it was time to try to do something different within the company outside of this group. And it was absolutely devastating to me, right? I wasn't used to not succeeding. My feelings were hurt. Where was I missing the mark? Where was I leading my team that maybe wasn't in strategic alignment with where I should have been? I started questioning myself. I secretly blamed others, didn't say it out loud, and maybe shed a few tears privately. Not going to lie, thought for a few minutes maybe I should quit IBM. I might have got a little too comfortable, got promoted a little bit early and ended up failing. But then I thought, no, this is ridiculous. Did I do this perfectly? No. Luckily, the wallowing didn't last, and I found a new role. I took a little bit of a step back. I went from being a second-line manager early in my career, and then I became a first-line manager in a different group. In sales, I was probably in a group that was actually more strategically placed within IBM. The experience made me take a long, hard look at what I could have done better. At the end of the day, it ended up being probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, and it made my skin just a little bit thicker and a little bit thicker. I got a taste for what failure felt like in the professional world. It was my first, most bitter taste. I hated it. I used it as motivation that it wasn't going to happen again. Perhaps that's why I do so much self-reflection. From that failure, I learned to be more disciplined and recover for sure.
In moments of failure, you get choices. How you choose to react says everything about what long-term prospects you have. There are a lot of people who curl up in those moments. We always love to talk about leadership and about, are you born to be a good leader or is it something you learn?
This is a really, really good question. People have certain personality traits that maybe they're born with, maybe it's a product of their upbringing, that are absolutely critical to be a good leader. Humility, self-awareness, empathy. Those are really, really hard skills to learn. There's two distinct different people in the professional world that take leadership positions. You have leaders and you have managers. managers take advantage of their position and their teams will do what they need them to do. A leader who has more of those soft skills works with their team to do what they need them to do and to want to do what they need them to do. Can you learn to do that? I don't know. I think leaders that don't have a combination of those skills, it's going to be really hard to bridge that chasm.
It's interesting because you're talking about soft skills, but they're hard skills to learn. You have to go through certain things. And if you're open to learning them, then great things will happen. Where does young Stacie Mason learn to have humility, self-awareness, empathy? Where do you learn those soft skills?
From my upbringing. I was always told that I could do anything I wanted to do, but I wasn't better than anybody. I saw that modeled in my parents and people around me. I just think that it probably came from there. It came from me going through different experiences with peers or whatnot that weren't so great. So you learn empathy. We all go through hard times, and every human in the world is trying to do the very best they can every single day. Just try to give people credit for that.
Powerful. You know, you've used the word teams to describe those who work for you a couple different times. And many people call their corporate organizations teams, but they're really not teams. They're just a bunch of people that happen to have the same business card. If you're trying to coach a young leader on how to take a group of individuals and mold them into a team, give me some of the advice you give somebody.
We all know when we've been on those teams, there is a difference. When you're trying to build that team, everyone on the team, especially the leader, has to model that whole respect for the individual. So it's clear that all ideas and all people in the team will be heard, will be respected. It's so critical. You need that lack of fear for any team. Second, the most effective teams I've been on are filled with people with diverse backgrounds, different experiences, different point of views, and that makes sure that you don't fall into a blind spot because you're not aware, you've never touched that part of the business. You don't understand as you make a decision what the repercussion could be because you just don't know. And try to make sure you have ripple creators, right? People that are always trying to get the team even further as opposed to those ripple stoppers. You always want someone to tell you the truth, but you don't want to have a team with a bunch of people on it that say, hey, we've never done it that way, so it can't be done. You definitely want your realist. That's great. Make sure you've got people that really want to go on a journey and figure out how to take the business further.
Ripple creators, not ripple stoppers.
Right.
I like it. Such a great visual. You know, you talk about diversity. I'm intrigued by this. As a leader, it's one thing to bring diverse experiences onto your team. It's another to be inclusive of those things. Some folks feel like they're included on a team just to check a box, as opposed to really be heard.
Right. I'm a question asker. When I've had people from diverse backgrounds that I don't understand, that I had never experienced, I like in one-on-one situations to ask them about their life. One of my most favorite employees grew up in India. His background was so different than mine. And I was always so fascinated to learn about his family. And he's lovely and has included me in outings with his wife and his daughter. A healthy, genuine interest in people's lives and not making assumptions broadens your understanding about how people might react, how people might think. So I think asking honest questions in a respectful environment makes someone feel like you are very interested in their interest. And I also think, if you share personal aspects of your life as a leader with people, it helps people open up and then they share things about their lives. You create a mutual trust and respect that way.
It's important to do these things in one-on-one situations.
Right.
People need to feel they're not going to be judged and then pull them aside and learn more. And you can begin that process of kind of building bridges. But listening is an art form. It feels some days as if it's lost.
How do you even know what to say if you haven't listened? If a leader isn't spending a good amount of their time talking to their clients and their employees, how on point is their message going to be? I've got a client with locations all over the world. I need to listen to them. What is their experience? How do we compare to competition? Unless I listen, I'll be a terrible communicator. I'll have terrible plans. It's a big part of the leader's job to listen. Less time talking, more time listening.
I love that you asked them, how do we compare to our competition? That's a daring question to ask. What kind of guidance do you get out of asking questions like that?
Oh, you get a lot of answers you don't want to hear, but if you don't know the problems, you can't fix them. If I don't know where we're falling down, I can't make their experience better. I can't make it easier, and I can't be successful. And that's the beauty. You have to know what the issues are. They'll very polite and say, well, we like this, but here's where you're missing the mark. Here's how you can improve. I mean, how valuable is that? That's gold.
I love it. To have an executive position in a company as big as IBM, there's a lot of time in your life is consumed by work alone. And yet a lot of discussion around work-life balance. You have 2 daughters that you're very proud of. What advice are you giving others, especially aspiring leaders, trying to figure out this question of work-life balance?
One of the things I do at IBM is at any one time, I'm probably mentoring at least a half a dozen. It tends to be female, early or mid-career. Some young females tend to gravitate towards me because they're kind of struggling with some things they know that maybe I've already gone through. And I actually have this conversation quite a bit because I love seeing these amazing young women blossom. Whether you're a man or a woman, you have to know what's important to you right now, whatever that now is. Figure out your work situation so you don't compromise that. My husband and I both worked, and we had girls when we were fairly young. As a result, we really needed the support of family and friends and, neighbors. Like they say, it takes a village to raise a family. We decided very early on in our career that we weren't going to move. We lived in Dallas and we were going to stay in the area. Now, that's not an easy decision to make when you have some ambition and you work for a company whose name is an acronym for I've been moved. You have to have clarity about what's important to you. And then you have to make job choices that are going to let you balance it. Have I been on conference calls in my car at a soccer game before? Yes, I have. Have I missed something because I was supposed to be home and a flight was delayed? Yes, I have. But have I tried my best to schedule things so that if my flight would have been timed, I would be there? I mean, it's not easy, but you just have to be true to yourself. You have to know what's most important. And then maybe you do take a lateral or two until you feel like you've got the energy and the time to give to something more. That's what it took for me to do it.
Couple of things. It's about knowing what your non-negotiables are right now.
Okay.
You're not making a decision necessarily for life.
Right.
Those things are for right now. And then making choices based upon not compromising. It's funny how many people we know who've said this is a non-negotiable and then they'll compromise against it.
Right.
I love that choice. But you mentioned the mentoring of these half dozen or so, often younger women who are looking to you as kind of role model. Is that a formal mentoring relationship?
It typically starts as an informal kind of seek me out where I'll meet somebody, have some professional interaction with them, and then they'll ask me, do you have the bandwidth to spend some time with me? I don't think I've ever said no.
Now that's on this podcast, you're going to get more calls.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you work for a large company where you might not understand or you might not know the implications of. And I feel like there's lots of things I wish I knew as I was going through the business. So some people I talk to once a month. Sometimes I talk to people once a quarter. What I say to them, though, is that you schedule the time with me, you own it, and we'll talk about everything from how do I ask for a raise? Is there really a big difference being an executive versus a non-executive? Can you really work and have a baby at the same, just the whole plethora. I really enjoyed.
I'm fascinated by this. What do you say are the qualities of a good mentor?
You should probably be telling me this. You wrote the book.
No, I want to read yours.
All right. You want someone that has experience in the path that you're walking, but I think also honesty. Because I've had some gals that I have mentor ask me questions. I'm like, oh, well, you're crazy if you think that's the way it works. You want someone that's going to tell you really the way it is. And then ideally, you're going to want someone that'll be able to advocate for you within the company. If I see a program come through that's for high potential individuals, I might say, I think that gal that I'm mentoring, that would be perfect for her. I'll send that to her second, third line manager. And I say, I think this would be an awesome opportunity. And so a good mentor helps you through personal choices, helps you through career choices, and then acts as an advocate for you throughout your career, at least for, that slice of time where you're together.
It's really important too for these mentees to come back and let you know what they're doing with the advice you're giving them.
Exactly.
That's how you continue to fill the tank of the mentor as well.
Exactly.
I love it. I know that you add philanthropy to what you've learned in competition and business with your advocacy for breast cancer research and autism. How did these come to be and intersect?
I feel like I'm an incredibly fortunate person. I've got a lot of, friends, family, love in my life. I just feel like it's everyone's responsibility to give back. I mean, I have a fuller life than I ever imagined that I could have. And it's my obligation. It's just not taking what you have for granted and making sure other people are taken care of is so important.
It's pretty powerful.
Like everyone, breast cancer has touched my life very closely. Have lost people, have good friends that are dealing with it. It doesn't seem like it has to be that way. It seems like with all of the strides that we can make in medicine, we should be able to eradicate this. And then with autism, I also have really good friends that have incredible children who are autistic. And I feel like the world may see autistic children as somehow less than, but they are full and incredible people, just like everybody else that are full of potential. And I just think that we need to create a space for them. And so really comes from just personal experiences where I choose to spend time, spend money to try to make a difference.
As a father of a son on the spectrum, I'm grateful. Thank you. I've been lucky enough over a long career in journalism of asking a lot of great coaches and athletes if they could identify one habit that they built into their daily routine that they believe allowed them to separate themselves from others. Is there a habit in Stacie Mason's life where you think that habit helped make a difference in who you would become?
Anyone that knows me well will tell you that I am a planner and I'm obsessively organized. My life would break down if I ever lost my label maker. I mean, obsessively organized. I asked myself, is there something I could be doing right now to get myself prepared for tomorrow, next week, next month? Is there something sitting on my to-do list, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, that I could just do right now, and that's going to free up time later? Is that from being a working mom? But then I look back when I was a kid and I kind of did the same thing. My mother would make fun of me in my little lists, trying to stay ahead of things. I have never regretted getting something done early. It gives me a little bit of peace of mind, and it gives me the time and the space to think about the future and not worrying about what has to be done right away. It's probably already done.
We covered a lot of ground there when we go from a satirical math magazine to I couldn't live without my label maker. Neither one of those have ever come up in any interview I've done. So you have clearly cut some new space for us.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but all right.
It's memorable is what it is. So give me something that's happening at IBM that you're really excited about right now.
IBM is over 100 years old. That's unheard of in the tech industry. IBM is constantly reinventing itself. The IBM that I work for today is so different from the IBM I hired on within the 90s. I started in IBM in the technology groups. The company has changed and we're going back to our technology roots. So IBM is back to growth. We're showing a consistent track record of growing quarter after quarter. This may sound corny, but it's the core technologies that help run the world. I guarantee you're not doing a bait transaction. You're not going to the hospital. You're probably not paying your taxes without touching something IBM is doing. It makes me really proud to work there. And I'm just super proud that we're right back there at our roots of focusing on these core technologies.
You've certainly seen it through the cycle.
Oh, wow.
It's been amazing what that company has done and continue to change to be able to do. Stacie Mason, I am so grateful that I got the chance at that event to cross paths, to learn more about you, and to have you here today as a corporate competitor. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor. It's been an honor.
Well, I think you can tell from the conversation why it was that I, after meeting Stacie Mason, couldn't wait to have her on this podcast. She is one of the most inquisitive people I think I've ever met. That really plays into much of what I learned from her today. I love the discussion about how important mentoring is to her, how she seeks and is grateful for the opportunity to reach into the lives of a half dozen young women at any given time and help them think through their balance and how they're going to progress in their career. What's important to you right now
And as you figure out what that is, make sure that you work your life situation so that you don't compromise on that standard. What a really impactful lesson on the idea of giving back and mentoring other people. The second real great takeaway I had came from her discussion around team building and about putting together a team of very diverse individuals and how important it is, if you're going to be a leader, to be a question asker by nature, pulling people aside in one-on-one situations to ask about their life, show a healthy, genuine interest, not making assumptions. She talked about asking her clients, how do we compare to our competition? How do you know what to say if you don't listen? Powerful, powerful discussion. I encourage you, as you start thinking about your goals, as you're laying out what you're going to do in your growth, as you start thinking about your relationship with your customers, that you allow them to weigh in, just as Stacie does. What a great gift she gave us today. I'm thankful for her wisdom, and I am so grateful that you joined us today as corporate competitors.
If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir. How are
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.